Welcome to EyE on You. On July 7th, the Hong Kong University Student Union Council passed a motion to appreciate the sacrifice of an assailant who stabbed a police before committing suicide. The Student Union Council expressed condolences over his unfortunate passing, which drew backlash from all sectors in Hong Kong. Some of its members have recently been charged by the police for advocating terrorism. The incident has once again caused the community to reflect on how to rectify the series of chaos in the education sector since the handover, such as the promotion of Hong Kong independence by student unions at universities and strikes in secondary schools.
In this episode, we have invited Professor Arthur Li, who is a doctor and a politician. He is currently a member of Executive Council and the chairman of the Council of the University of Hong Kong. Professor Li was a former Dean of Medicine and President of Chinese University, and he became the city's education chief from 2002 to 2007. Professor Li would join the Basic Law Committee, which operates under the MPCSC. Today, we will focus on the latest debate over education issues and the new proposals suggested by the government, further relaxing a hiring scheme aimed at tackling the city's shortage of doctors, opening the door for non-permanent residents, including from mainland China, to practice as specialists without taking a local exam. Let's welcome Professor Li. Hello, Professor Li. Thank you for coming to our show.
Thank you very much, Eunice. Edward, thank you.
Thank you. So in 2019, the CUHK campus were occupied by protesters during month-long riots, leading to a massive damage in aftermath of the fiery clashes with police. Chinese University revealed that there are about 10 of the students had been disciplined over these protest-related incidents on campus. Do you think that the university management should take the responsibility over the students' participation in these protests and riots?
I don't think it's just the university management. I think parents, teachers also should take responsibility because you can't just leave it to the university itself to discipline the students or to educate the students. With education, it takes everybody should play a part. And so this is why I think the teachers and parents are very, very important.
Recently, students from the Student Union Council passed a motion praising a man who stabbed a police and then killed himself. So as a result, 4 students was charged with advocating terrorism. So what's your opinion on this issue? And some said that it is too harsh on the students. So what do you think?
Well, what happened is that our university council deliberated this matter. Basically, the university council has a responsibility to protect the university. Now, under the national security law, in Article 26, anyone that gives venue, information or support to anyone who breaks the national security law is also liable for criminal charges. So in order to protect the university, we immediately took the step that all the 44 members of the union student are banned from the university, are banned from all university facilities. This is to protect the university. Now, having done that, subsequently, the police has charged 4 students. 3 of them are still in remand, and 1 has got bail. Now, those 4 students, we will have to wait for the courts to decide what to do with them. So, as far as we're concerned, the ban will continue for those 4 students. Now, for the other students, 5 of the students were not involved at all because they didn't turn up for the meeting. Right? So therefore, if they didn't participate in the meeting, there's no reason why we should ban them, right? There was another 5 students who turn up, but they turn up late. So by the time they turn up late, that resolution praising the terrorists has already been passed. So they did not participate in any of the voting. So therefore, they did not constitute any risk to the damage to the university. So again, we said those 5 students, we should lift the ban from them. So that makes 10 students, we lifted the ban. There were 3 other students who do not have voting rights. So they never voted. So if they never voted, again, we feel that the ban should not be applied to them. So that makes 13 students. Now, there were 5 other students who voted for the resolution, but when we interviewed them, they were actually very contrite. And basically, they voted because of peer pressure. They didn't really understand what was going on. There was a lot of chaos and so on. And we felt that they do not pose a risk to the university because they were unlikely to damage the university. So again, we said, okay, those 5 students, we will also lift the ban. So altogether, we have lifted the ban on 18 students, with 4 students, the ban continuing. Now, there were still 22 students left, and we tried to contact them, but they are very uncooperative. They came up with the lawyers and they refused to answer any questions and so on. So therefore, we cannot know what was happening with them, whether they continue to pose a risk to the university or they do not, we really don't know. So we are writing to them again and urge them to come and see us and explain themselves to us so that we could make a decision on what to do.
It is a very fair decision.
Yes. So speaking of the student union, we're all very concerned about the future and their roles in school. So as the University of Hong Kong said that they would stop providing the financial management services for the student union, how do you see the futures of the student union when they are becoming more politicized in these recent years?
Well, the Hong Kong University Student Union is a separate body from the university. It's not part of the university. They are registered under the Society Ordinance, though they are actually outside the university. So the university has no obligation to do anything for them, right? Now, obviously, if they were looking after student affairs, looking after the welfare of students, we will be very happy to work with them. But if they take political stands and do all sorts of things that may damage the university, obviously, we do not want to have any part to do with them. And so this is the situation.
Hong Kong's liberal studies will be renamed as citizenship and social development. So new elements such as patriotism, national development, and lawfulness will be included in the new syllabus. How do you comment on this change, and is it going to help students developing positive values?
Now, I was responsible for bringing liberal studies all those years ago. Basically, we want liberal study to be a subject that allows critical thinking for the students. So instead of teaching history or geography, we try to integrate that subject into a more holistic approach. There's nothing wrong with the idea of critical thinking and helping the student to think independently, nothing wrong with that. Unfortunately, when it was implemented, we gave no training to the teachers. We have no teaching materials. So many of the teachers really have no idea how to go about teaching the subject. Not sufficient support. So under those circumstances, the teacher would just grab whatever newspaper they can get hold of and talk about, what was current affairs. And that really defeats our purpose. Now we realize that something needs to be done. And so we have now revamped the curriculum, so to speak. But the important thing is not so much the content of the curriculum. The important thing is the teachers. So this sort of thing is very important to make sure that the teachers are trained properly.
Also, as the society is becoming more politicized, like in 2014 and what we have happened in the protest in 2019, we are very concerned about the school materials. So, do you think that, as one of your colleagues suggested, that there should be CCTV installed in school, or the materials all should be vetted by the EDB? How do you think the quality of the school materials can be make sure that they are unbiased and they are correctly to be presented to the students?
Now, I think the majority of schools and the majority of teachers are very professional. So I have every faith in them that they will do it properly. But sadly, in any profession, there is a minority of bad eggs, if I could use that. And it is important to find out who is responsible for misleading our students. Now, we have gone through 2014, 2019, we know large number of rioters are actually students, and we know what schools they come from. So therefore, it is important to target those schools and say, how come these particular schools turn out so many rioters? I mean, these are innocent victims. The students are innocent victims. They have been misled, they have been brainwashed. So somebody must be responsible for that. And those schools must have responsibility for misleading our students. So we need to identify those schools, and we need to then go into the school-based management and go to the school management and say, what are you doing about these sort of things? Now, we identify that in your school, you have so many students who are now convicted of being rioters. What are you doing about it? And what are the material you're teaching your students? And I think that would be much more sensible and much more targeted than saying all 1,000 schools in Hong Kong would need to be examined, because you don't really have that manpower to go through all the subjects and all the materials.
Right. Mentioning the Education Bureau, the Education Bureau does not directly regulate the tertiary education in Hong Kong, and some believe that the tertiary sector is always out of reach of the government. So as a chairman of the Council of the University of Hong Kong, in your opinion, how shall the government monitor the management of the local universities?
The university has a lot of autonomy in Hong Kong. Basically, we have the University Grants Committee, which acts as a buffer between the government and the university. We go to the University Grants Committee and say, we want to do XYZ courses, we need so much resources. Then the government will tell UGC and say, we need such and such manpower, please train up so many doctors or nurses and so on. So the University Grants Committee acts as an honest broker between the university and the government. So it's a very good way that the government can be seen not to interfere with tertiary education and give us so-called academic freedom to do what we want, but at the same time, it does exert certain constraint on us, and it's up to the government and us to negotiate.
Understood.
Yes, we are talking about the national security. How do you think it can be carried out in our university curriculum or secondary and primary schools?
Now, first of all, it is very important that we instill ethics into our students, even from a very young age. Civic education, care for other people, to be compassionate human beings. These sort of things, I think we need to really teach them from a very early age. Now, as far as the university goes, we have general education in our university. We have student hostels which have dinner, inviting speakers to come and talk various topics that are relevant. And I think through these means, we can disseminate this knowledge to our students.
So should the general studies be compulsory in the tertiary education?
Yes, yes. They have to do a number of courses of general education.
Yes, to achieve some credits in the university.
In order to do that.
Yes.
So let's talk about the healthcare system in Hong Kong. As we all know, we are facing an acute shortage of public doctors in our system. So in order to tackle this problem, some new plans are on its way, such as doctors practicing outside of Hong Kong will be allowed to work in Hong Kong without taking the local licensing exam. So do you think the new plan can tackle the problem?
Well, I think, first of all, we all agree that there is a great shortage of doctors in Hong Kong, particularly in the public sector. Not so much in the private sector, but in the public sector. Now, the argument is that we need to retain the doctors in the public sector rather than import doctors. And one analogy that people have been saying was that the patient is hemorrhaging, so you should stop the hemorrhage, right? But I think the patient is hemorrhaging, you need to stop the hemorrhage, but you also need to give a transfusion, right? And by importing Hong Kong residents who are trained overseas back into our system is a form of transfusion. So I see nothing wrong in that our Hong Kong residents who are trained overseas, and it's their resources that train our people to come back to Hong Kong. So we should welcome these doctors who are our own brothers and sisters to come back and work in our public sector. And they have to work for at least 5 years, right, before they can become fully registered. The government has been criticized by saying they have not gone far enough, we should attract more. So now they are saying that, okay, if they are specialists who can come and work in Hong Kong, they can carry on for 5 years in Hong Kong. And if they're recognized, then they can get full registration as well. So this is really to open the door more to non-Hong Kong residents as well. Now, whether this is sufficient, I think we will have to wait and see. But obviously, the more doctors in coming to Hong Kong is good for the public, because at the moment, you have to wait up to 3 years to see an orthopedic specialist, right? And if you've got pain in your back or in your hip and you need an operation, you have to wait 3 years before you see a specialist. Now, it doesn't mean you get treated. It just means you get consultation. Yes. Then you got to another long waiting list before you can get treatment.
Yes.
And this is not good for our population. And this is not fair to our population. And so this is why we really need to do something about it. And this is what the government is trying to do. Now, the other problem, of course, is that we need to retain doctors in our public system. I would say most doctors are very idealistic. We work because we want to help people. But if our working environment is not happy, is not conducive, then we lose the meaning of our work, right? What are we working for if we don't get job satisfaction? So it is very important to ensure that our doctors in our public sector get job satisfaction. And at this moment in time, I can see that they're not getting enough job satisfaction. But hopefully, with the new chairman, Dr. Fan, I think he will be doing something to encourage doctors to stay on in the public sector, to give them a sense of purpose that they're doing something really worthwhile. And it's not just after money. I don't think it's a question of money.
So we all know that usually doctors use English language for the daily work, such as writing out the medical records and for the prescription and such as like that. Some of the notable Chinese university in China, they also use English as a medium, as a teaching medium. So do you think that we should open up more, like in the recognized list for the Chinese university in mainland China?
Well, there is now a committee to vet about 100 medical schools to see if they're comparable to our 2 medical schools here in Hong Kong. And certainly, many of these medical schools are really top class medical schools, right? Like my old university, Cambridge, Oxford, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, and so on. As for the Chinese medical school, if they teach in English, there are not that many, but like PUMC in Beijing taught entirely in English, and the standard is extremely high. So I have every confidence in this committee to vet which school are comparable to our standards in Hong Kong. So if they meet our criteria, I do not see any problem in inviting them to come to Hong Kong.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Li, for your time. Your sharing has been very insightful, and we hope that you can come back to our show next time.
Thank you very much, Edward.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.